Hello everyone, and welcome back to POLYCOSM. This is part 2 of our series on the Xerocole. Last week, we worked on creating a variety of rough sketches, then narrowed our options down towards a final concept. In this video, we'll take that rough concept and flesh it out further. We are going to think about the anatomical structure of the creature and build it from inside out. Okay, here's a rough sketch I drew based on the side view from last week. As soon as I finished sketching this out, I realized that I have some gaps in my knowledge base when it comes to rodent anatomy. So I decided to take some time to do further research and study on this topic. I'm mostly looking at squirrel and jerboa anatomy here, as our creature is closest to those two. I also have a fox anatomy diagram there, since I wanted our creature to have very slight similarities to a fennec fox as well. My main goal here is to investigate the common elements seen in these different animals. I am largely focusing on establishing the three main masses: head, ribcage, and hips. This is very similar to how you'd construct a human anatomy as well. Mammals in general have a lot of similarities in their anatomy. What changes most is the proportions and the formation of these three masses. If you can focus on getting these three elements down, then the rest ends up becoming much easier. When working on studies like these, it is essential to be constantly thinking about what you're observing and recreating. If you are just mindlessly copying what you're seeing, then you won't be getting what you should be getting from your study session. The whole point is we are trying to understand what we are seeing, making observations, coming to conclusions, and processing it all through the act of drawing. Okay, it's time to get back to our project and apply everything we have learned. I'm letting all the observations I made in my studies sorta blend together in my head, and I'm applying it all in my own way. I'm thinking about the three masses I mentioned before: head, ribcage, and hips, how the spine, or the line of action, how it runs through all of these three masses. I'm thinking about all these fundamental elements, and I'm applying it all in my own sketch. You don't necessarily have to go into a lot of detail when sketching out the skeletal structure. It can be quite fun at times to do a project like that, and I have done this before in the past where I had to draw the entire skeleton, then the muscle mass of the creature, before going over it all with the final exterior layers. For the sake of time, here we'll do just enough of it and quickly move on to covering the skeleton with body mass. The skeletal structure gives us the gesture and basic proportions to work with. Now, by adding the mass over it, we are focusing on the overall shape design. I mentioned last week the big, medium, small concept, right? So if we were to split our design into three parts, we'd want each size parameter to apply to one part. In this case, our creature has a big body, medium-sized tail, and a small head. A design with this kind of shape relation works better than if, for example, the head, the body, and the tail of our creature were all pretty much the same size. By varying the proportions, we are creating a design that is more appealing, that is more interesting and dynamic. After I have all of the big shapes done for the body mass, I start to go in and add some detail. I start to think more about the texture, the surface quality of all these different parts. I know certain parts of this animal is going to be sort of hard, like shell-like, and other parts are going to be softer, where he's going to have a lot of fur covering him. For example, in our Xerocole, on his back, there's this cactus-like growth, right? So he's got all these spiky bits sticking out. These bits help him camouflage himself among cacti, but also it acts as a defense mechanism. This way a predator can't really attack him from behind. I'm indicating the different surface qualities of these parts as best as I can in the sketch. This way, when it comes to the sculpting phase, Christina can identify where she has to sculpt a hard shell and where she has to sculpt fur. It took me some time to figure out how the hard shell on his back is going to work. I wasn't quite sure how to really blend it with the fur, or if I should blend it. In the end, we decided that it's better to be inspired by the pink fair armadillo that you can see in the references right there, and to have the hard shell just lay over on top of his fur. Honestly, at first I thought if the shell was sorta just sitting on top of the fur, it might look a bit fake. But then, you look at the pink fair armadillo right there, and that is an animal that actually exists, and that's how his anatomy works, so we decided to just go with it. Christina looked at the sketches I have so far, and she asked me to clarify a couple of things in the side view, such as the head shape. In the original sketch, the Xerocole's head wasn't quite in a profile view, and she also asked me to simplify the tail shape. This is all obviously just to help her with the sculpting process, when she has these side views or the front views in a more orthographic way, as simplified as possible. It makes her job a lot easier. I'll also be adding a front view sketch. This really helps establish the overall proportions of the creature. In the near future, I'm planning on making a more in-depth video about design fundamentals. Something that will go over basic shape language principles and how to use size relations between shapes to create better designs. Make sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you'll be notified as soon as that video is up. Of course, depending on when you're watching this, that video might be already up, and I'm sure there is something on the screen right now that you can click on to access it. And here we are, our final sheet of concept sketches for Xerocole. I added some base colors to make our little friend look fabulous for the presentation. Of course, the final color scheme might be different than this, but, why the hell not? Thanks for your time, everyone. I hope you found this video informative. If you can give us a like and possibly share this with other people who might find it interesting, we'd really appreciate it. Come back next week to find out how Christina will translate these sketches into a 3D sculpt. See you later, everyone.